Well, hello again and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm with my gorgeous, wonderful, love of my life, my Valentine, my wife and co-host, Michelle.
Thank you so much, sweetie. Hi, everybody.
So good to have you with us. We're actually recording this episode on Sunday, February 7th, 2021. That's because we are on vacation officially now. We are celebrating Valentine's Day out at in Florida. We're not quite at the Walt Disney World Resort yet, but we are in Florida. This episode, obviously, as we mentioned, is debuting on February 14th of 2021. We appreciate that you joined us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts. However, the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. And while you're there,
there'll be a little prompt that can remind you to sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah, it's really easy. There's all sorts of ways. Believe me, I put a lot of ways on our website for you to sign up for the newsletter. It's just another way to kind of be involved in the Hyperion Adventures podcast world, get some extra info of what we have going on, and help you be the first to give us input when we need something, when we're putting out questions out there, when we're putting out topics that we'd like you to chime in on.
Yeah, and sometimes we give you sneak peeks of some things coming up or some information that we don't share on the podcast.
Very true. So please sign up for that newsletter. Another way to be involved with us is out on social media. We have a lot of fun with a lot of people out on social media. Hopefully that includes you. If you haven't followed us yet, please find us on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We do have a YouTube channel. Now, I do have to say we are on vacation right now. This is being recorded in the past. Not the future, not the present. This is being recorded in the past. And because I'm on vacation, I'm not editing videos right now. So this may be a little delayed in getting there, but it will eventually get there. And the best way to know about that is just do a search for Hyperion Adventures Podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll know whenever these episodes, whenever our videos come out on YouTube.
Right. But at least our podcast is out.
Our podcast, we're not going to miss one. We are not missing podcasts. We are going to do 3 podcasts on one day, but we're not going to miss a podcast. Yes. If you ever want to contact us, another great way to get involved with us is to hit us up at our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
And we sure love hearing from you. We love those of you that participate in giving some of, like if we're doing lists, you give some feedback to that as well. And sometimes there's questions out there. We love answering your questions. Sometimes you might have a particular item you'd like us to do a deep dive in. We love doing that.
Yeah, Michelle does. I like listening to Michelle do the deep dives personally.
But or whatever, if you have some constructive criticism, we want to hear that as well.
For sure. So please hit us up there. Just even if you just want to say hi, we love hearing from you in various different ways, either whether it be the Gmail account, social media, whatever. Now, for today's show, like I mentioned, we are on vacation. This will be a little bit slightly different show in that we will not have Disney stories of the week for you. One, because this is recorded a week in the past, so everything would be old news at this point. But we will still follow up our main topic with our tip of the week. We will always like to leave you on every show with some sort of tip that might help you on your next vacation. But let's get right to it. Let's get to this week's main topic of the week. So yes, this is the season of 5 favorite episodes because we're having a lot of lists here because we're fitting a lot of these in, trying to rush to get things out as we get prepared to go on vacation and a few other things we have going on in our lives. Michelle working ridiculously hard for one thing. So this week, this is one we've been holding off on for a long time that we've really wanted to get to. This is, I think, one of the first 5 favorite topics that we thought that we might do at some point.
Right.
We won't be the first ones who ever done this, but we kind of felt like it's time. That is going to be our 5 favorite underrated Disney films. There are some great films out there that have just, for whatever reason, just kind of flown under the radar. Maybe they were big at one time and then just kind of got pushed back, and, behind some of the other great films that have come out since. But there are so many that we really love.
I mean, and now that Disney Plus is in existence, instance, it makes a little bit more sense that we can, possibly introduce people to some films that they might not have thought to try. And we love to hear from you because maybe you know of some films that we haven't tried, but at least it's in a situation, if you have Disney Plus, that you're going to have access to, I don't know if everything on your list, not everything on my list is on Disney Plus yet, but
I think everything on my list is on Disney Plus. So, and everything on my list is animated. No, I take it back. There's one live action film on my list. So there we go.
Yeah.
So let's get to it. I mean, we already know Michelle is going to have the very best list.
It's a weird
she has
list.
the best tips,
It's a
best
weird
announcements.
I'll tell you right
is,
then and now.
everything is great about Michelle, but she always has the very best list. I mean, again, her list is going to be all over the place. Mine is pretty much, if you could just think about an underrated Disney movie, it's probably going to be on my list. Her list, you never know where she's going to go with it. And by the way, another thing about underrated is that, it's all subjective. What do you feel? Some people may say, that's a really popular movie. What are you talking about? How can you think that's underrated? It's what you think is underrated about it. So like most of our 5 favorite list is very subjective. Now, speaking of subjective, let's get to Michelle's number 5 favorite underrated Disney film.
Okay, my number 5 is actually, a very historic Disney film. But I think even of the Disney films, it was probably one of the more underrated one, and that is Bedknobs and Broomsticks. And if you don't know the story, first of all, it stars Angela Lansbury, who is, in my opinion, brilliant actress and very
just your opinion.
Right.
I think most people think she's brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, and she's so versatile, and she's had such a long history. But in this particular storyline, it takes place in England during World War II, and she has a special way or a unique way that she wants to help contribute to the war efforts. And so I won't give anything away of that. Again, she plays a character very different than anything we've seen her in the past. But to me, it's just kind of a simply cute film. And it does also have some features where it has, storyline that seems a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say serious or, it is a serious topic if you're talking the war, but it's not a war story. But but there's also some levity to it, or a lot of levity to it. And I'm making it sound like a serious movie. Not at all a serious movie. But I like the fact that they have an part of the film that is animated with live action people in the animation, and some of the special effects that they do with it. It's just really cute. And obviously I think if it were to come out now, people probably wouldn't be as impressed with it, but from when it came out, during Walt's time, I think it was pretty historic.
Right. It's very reminiscent of Mary Poppins.
Right.
And there's a lot of aspects to it that are very similar to Mary Poppins, just in a different way, including the animation and live action combination. David Tomlinson is in it, who plays Mr. Banks in Mary Poppins as well, and plays another great role within that film. It is
a very different role also.
Right. It is a very nice choice. So Michelle's number 5, always the best. Number 5. So really good choice. So.
Thank you. What about you?
My number 5, I'm going to the world of Pixar. And, when it was recently that there was some sort of program, app, website, whatever it was, where you could go on and answer a bunch of questions comparing Pixar films, and it would compile your list of top Pixar films and where they would rank. And a lot of times this film would end up near the bottom of many. Sometimes it would be in the middle, but I kind of think of it higher than a lot of many people do. And that is Brave. I think Brave is actually a very good movie. And I think it's hard to find actually a really bad Pixar movie. There's some that maybe are a little lesser, but I think most Pixar movies are good. I think Brave has kind of gotten a raw deal on some people's books. And I think it's actually a wonderful story, all about family. Some people that, can get a little stubborn on both sides. We talk about Merida, who is a really strong, and the only Pixar Disney princess, by the way, really strong, thinks she knows everything, but she's a teenager. She doesn't know everything. Meanwhile, mom is being a bit stubborn on what she thinks is right and everything, and trying to get these lessons through to her. Maybe she's not exactly seeing eye to eye. And it takes these incidents that happen within this film for them to be able to kind of empathize with one another, see what each other is going through, And I find it's a really interesting and wonderful story. The animation, as far as the surroundings and the backdrops and everything, are really beautiful. The music is extremely underrated.
Right.
You know, if you like some of that sort of Scottish type of, you know, just sort of a different type of music to a film. It's really, really well done. And and we ended up kind of renewing our vows to kind of a brave, partial theme. So it's part of the reason why it's kind of close to our heart. And so that's why I kind of find it as a very underrated film and better than maybe some people rate it.
Right. I totally agree. I actually first had it on my list and I put it to honorable mentions. Same elements that you're saying. You know, it really is a heartwarming story that tells, you know, of a mother and daughter and how they had to struggle in how each other was expecting the other to handle situations. And that, again, when we talk about family films and family relationships, that it's really beautiful in that regards. And I agree. The music is, of all, you know, really wonderful. And I know you're saying it has that Scottish flair, but, you know, not all of it is. And so I think that, you know, it's something that broadly could be appreciated by people.
I agree. There's a tinge to it that feels Scottish. It's not like it's all bagpipes or anything.
Right, yeah.
You know,
Darn it.
Yeah, but there is a kind of tinge to it. There's a lot of, you know, maybe acoustic guitars and, you know, some of those kind of instruments that just, it's just, I enjoy it. I think it's really well done, and the music is great. And we could listen to the soundtrack and enjoy the soundtrack just alone.
True.
It's really good. So that's my number 5. Nice. Let's get to Michelle's number 4 favorite underrated Disney movie.
Okay, so I want to first reemphasize Bedknobs and Broomstick is a fun movie. It's not a dark or serious movie. But this next one is, and this one is a drama, and it's Horse Whisperer. And it can be a tough film to go through. It is, but it is just, it's very powerful, and it relates to this teenage girl who gets involved with she's obviously with a horse, but her and her horse are hit by a truck, and the therapy that it takes for her and the horse to go through and what that involves. And it actually involves an outsider to come in and help. But it really, like I said, it can be at times very deep or sad to watch, but it is so, I find it really a great film. I know that I think you probably don't put it on the same list as I do, but it is like, wow to me.
It's like one of those films that has, you know, it hits you at the right time, you know, with something going on in your life or whatever, and it means something to you. It never didn't really get that from me, but I have watched it with you, and I do think it's a good film, you know, and you do get rewarded at the end for it. You know, there are tough spots. It can be really difficult, but it is a strong film for sure.
Thank you.
So good choice. That's Michelle's number 4.
All right. Well, now we're up to your number 4.
My number 4. You look at an underrated list. This movie is almost always on the underrated list. And some people will say, well, I don't even think it's underrated because I think it's a very popular film. And that is Hercules is my number 4. Okay. We love this movie. I loved it since the first time it debuted. Love watching it. If it's on TV, we're stopping and we're probably going to watch it. It's got some terrific music to it. It's funny. There's some great action involved with it. And let's just, Hades is arguably top 5, maybe top 3 Disney villains of all time within it. There's so much, you know, there's a lot of meta stuff as far as, you know, it being historic, but being more modern day as well. Some sort of alluding to a lot of different things. It's just enjoyed. And we also love Susan Egan as Meg. I mean, she's a favorite of ours. I think she plays a great role within this film. And it's just one of those movies, again, that we loved always. Now, again, some people will say Hercules isn't underrated. I think it is a little bit. I think it gets buried behind some of the other movies that came around that Disney Renaissance, but it is a movie that we love very much.
Oh, definitely do love it. And, it has all the aspects that you were talking about. Totally agree with you about Hades there. And yeah, I mean, I guess I can see it being considered underrated. I could argue both ways with that film, but yeah, I think it's a great one to include on your list.
Again, subjective on what you feel about it. So, but that's my number 4. Let's get to Michelle's number 3 favorite underrated Disney movie.
Okay. My next one, again, very weird list, I'll admit to that, is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
You're all over the map. We were just watching that just last weekend, as a matter of fact. We caught it probably about, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the way in and started watching it, yeah.
It is just, it's kind of a quirky film.
It's very quirky.
It is very quirky, but it is funny, and it's got interesting characters for sure. I love the music. I remember when it came out, I actually bought the CD, and Scott loves it too. But it's just kind of it's these weird characters, and you're like, this just doesn't seem right. But it almost takes kind of a parallel of the Odyssey and the Iliad and tell it in a more modern, in the sense that it's not modern today, but modern from Greek mythology kind of situations. But it is weird, but I think it's just funny.
Yeah, it is the retelling of the story of the Odyssey. You know? I mean, it in a different way, but it's George Clooney. It's a interesting movie, and it is a very well done movie. It is fascinating to see how they approach it, and I enjoy it too. I mean, I think that it's another film that I think hits you at the right moment. That you are a bigger fan of than I am. But I still, if it's on, I'm probably going to stop and watch it. It is a good film.
I mean, I think if somebody's just maybe watching it on TV and first catching it, they might think, like his character is so over the top, but it needs to be. But and I guess you're right. I first saw it on a Disney cruise, and so enjoying the cruise, and then seeing this, and it was like, wow, this is really quirky, and kind of like that. But again, I like the music as well, and it is a weird movie, but I would recommend it. I would recommend it. You might not like it, but
it's good.
It might be one to just try to give it a chance, but get past the
just beginning. Be ready.
Be ready to get past. You got to keep with it for a while. Don't give up on it.
Just be ready. Yeah, you kind of got to adapt to that world that they're in.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So
anyways, that's my number 3.
And the look of it too. It's got a little weird look to it that you have to kind of adjust to and be prepared for. So yeah. But it is good. So, good choice.
Oh, thank you. So now we're at your number 3.
My number 3 is, and whoever thought that we would have something out of this cinematic universe that would be underrated. But I feel that this movie really is, and that is out of the Star Wars universe. It's Solo, a Star Wars story, which I feel is incredibly underrated as a film. Is it a perfect film? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. There are some issues that it has. But it is a very good film, and it really is just a fun ride more than anything else. It's a fun film. Unfortunately, it kind of got caught up in the ripple effect after The Last Jedi, when there was a lot of controversy about that film between the Star Wars fandom, a lot of that going. And I just feel, there were some director changes, some writer changes and everything. And it just kind of, and people questioned, somebody else playing Han Solo besides Harrison Ford, how that was going to come off. And so it just kind of, and it just kind of didn't do well at the box office. It's done much better when it was released on digitally and now on Disney Plus. But it did scuffle to begin with. But it really is a fun film. I feel Alden Ehrenreich did a wonderful job of capturing what Harrison Ford brought to Han Solo. Some of the mannerisms, some of the edge, some of that sarcasm. I think he does a spectacular job. Does he look exactly like Harrison Ford as Han Solo? No, but there's those once in a while where you get this look and you're like, there it is. There's Han.
Exactly. I remember when we first saw it, you mentioned that to me, and then I was like, okay, let's go to the theater and see it again. And then I loved it. Like you said, he really did capture that essence beautifully, and definitely true that it was an underrated film at that time.
And more than anything, it was nice to be in a Star Wars movie that it's like, there is some things that are trying to happen there, but it's not, we have to save the galaxy at this point
yes.
or whatever it is. You know, it was just a fun little kind of adventure ride, a little bit of a heist movie going on in there.
Right.
And, you know, again, it had its flaws for sure. There's no question about it. You want to go back to our Star Wars Remembered series where we talked about that film. We talked about some of its flaws. But bottom line, it's a fun ride. The cast is great in it. And, you know, it was leading to something that unfortunately we didn't continue on to a next movie. So that's why we have to hashtag make Solo 2 happen.
Exactly.
Because it's very important. I think that there's some more great stories to be told from some of the characters that are involved within it. And whether it has to be on Disney Plus or it's a theatrical release, I don't care. I want to delve more into some of these characters and where they were leading the story when they left off from Solo, a Star Wars story.
Sure. No, definitely. And it was fun watching the backstory of how Hans and Chewbacca met and, you know, became friends. And, you know, so that was good to, you know, have something that you could, you know, understand where that friendship came from and why that commitment to each other existed.
Right.
You know, and like you said, there were some other people involved, and the fact that, you know, you see Darth Maul in there.
Spoiler alert!
I just say you see him. I didn't give too much away there, but I mean, so that they did bring in some other characters from some of the prequels as well. It was an interesting film.
Yeah,
to do that. Yeah.
And that's why it's my number 3 favorite underrated Disney film.
Totally
Let's get to Michelle's number 2, because I'm sure it's going to be great. Michelle's number 2 favorite underrated Disney film.
Okay, well, my number 2, and I'm actually kind of surprised I hadn't heard you say it yet, and it may be on your list, but it is a Pixar film, and it's A Bug's Life.
It hasn't been said yet because it is also my number 2.
Oh, wow, that's funny.
What a coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know that it has, you know, it has a villain that's really evil looking, and so maybe for some kids it's a little scary or something like that, but I don't know. It just seemed like it did get passed by on being appreciated for the story that it tells. And I know that it was, I think, up against Ants. That was with another studio at the time.
2 Ants movies coming out at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes it kind of difficult. But
Bug's Life's better, by the way.
Yeah.
Personally. Just, you know, my personal opinion. But.
Right. And Bug's Life was really cute. And on top of that, it did spark having Disney California Adventure have a Bug's Life Land for a while. I think it was a nice prequel to what they ended up doing with Cars Land, but you know, and over at in Toy Story Land over at Walt Disney World. But you know, it definitely, they saw how meaningful some of those characters were, and I was glad to see that they incorporated that theme. But yeah, it's just I mean, it does have a nice story to it, and it uses unique characters to describe that story.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think the reason why I think it's gotten passed over is because it was the second Pixar movie that was ever released, you know, and the Toy Story was obviously a huge hit. Then they released, and there was a question like, how do we follow that up? You know, where basically, you know, we've been doing small things, we've been doing shorts, we've been doing commercials.
Right.
How are we going to follow that up? And they came out with The Bug's Life, and it actually did very well. It was very well received. It did very well. It came out and did, you know, it did great for Pixar. But then just following that, we had there was like a murderer's row of great Pixar movies that came out. Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, WALL-E. I mean, so many. I mean, you just keep going down the list of all these great Pixar films. And I think it just kind of got pushed to the wayside by all these other great Pixar films. But it really is an intriguing story. It's funny. There's a lot of heart in it. You know, I mean, you know, the story of Flick, and he's just kind of this inventive ant, but you know, somehow his inventions, while they work, they just kind of go awry a lot of times, you know, through some fault of his own, some non-fault of his own. He's a little neurotic. He's got some issues involved.
Doofenshmirtz.
Right. Just a little bit. But it's an enjoyable film. The actually animation is a huge step up from Toy Story up to that point. I mean, yes. They keep taking strides, but there are some really great scenes within it. It's just really another great fun film that has has a great heart, a great story, and definitely underrated, and is worth going back if you haven't seen it in a while, going back and checking it out because it is really good.
It's fun. Yeah, definitely.
So those are both of our number 2.
Wow.
What do you know? We synced up for once.
Yeah.
I'm sure we won't sync up on number 1, but let's see. Let's get to Michelle's, which will be the best number 1.
I don't know.
Michelle's number 1 favorite underrated Disney film.
So my number 1 is The Fox and the Hound.
Oh.
And I know that we've talked about this in terms of other elements of this movie, but I do find that it was such a powerful story, first of all, about how prejudices start, that they're actually implanted in and not inborn, and that before that happens, unlikely people can get together and really get along. And if we can only just focus on the things that we have in common and the things that we enjoy together, it is really, an important message. And I loved how it was very subtle, in that. I also love that it has, some heart-wrenching moments.
It has real heart-wrenching moments. Like, you want to be careful with your kids watching this because there's scenes that will wreck you.
Yes.
It was there's a reason why some of this was part of our Disney songs that make us cry.
Right.
Yeah, because there's at least one scene that will just devastate you.
Right. And so, it has the elements of what you would see in traditional Disney movies. I guess I also like the fact that the history of it at the time, it was during a very difficult time for Disney animation. There was some real struggles of where the storyline should go, some important parts to the story, and that conflict resulted in some really long-term effects that were difficult for the Disney company. And so I won't go into that now, but I think knowing some of that and knowing that it still produced a very rich, adorable film was something that I felt made it really underrated.
Great choice.
Thank you.
It is a good pick and would have been on my honorable mentions because it is a really good film despite the troubles it had. If you want to go back and watch Finding Sleeping Beauty, the documentary of what was going on, this was just prior to the Disney Renaissance, what happened in the film, because this was a film that took a big hit because of some things that were going on there, and they had some scuffles for it. And there are parts of this film that do suffer from it, but it still is a very good film. And like I said, it will touch you in many different ways, happy and sad, if you watch it. So good choice.
Thank you. So now we're at your number 1.
My number 1 is a movie I reference often because of its music. And I feel that it is really a great film it's another film that's gotten pushed back. Maybe it's because of its dark themes. Maybe it's because it has many adult themes, but that is The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
Now, also, there's another thing. Disney definitely took dramatic liberties to what the actual story of Hunchback of Notre Dame is, whether it be the actual book or the play or the movie, I should say, the original movie or whatever. They tried to make this a little more kid friendly, but it's not really a kid's film. This is very adult film. There are, like I said, many adult themes to it. It can be really dark at times, and that may be where this suffers a little bit and why it gets pushed to the wayside. However, it is a cute storyline when you really get down to the brass bones of it. Quasimodo is adorable.
Yes.
The music, and I've said this every time we bring out one of these songs for it, you could put this top to bottom score against virtually any Disney movie out there, and it will go toe to toe with it, if not blow it away as far as
in Broadway.
Yeah. The songs that they're involved in this film. And also, I think it hits close to home with us because of the fact that, look, we have a child who has Down syndrome, okay? Quasimodo suffers because of the way he looks. They decide when they need to put him away, and people make fun of him kind of because of the way he looks, okay? Dealing with Scott, sometimes we've seen people look at him in different ways, react to him in different ways because of the way he acts, because of the way he looks. But if you get to know him, just like as if you get to know Quasimodo, you realize what a rich and deep heart he has and how much more there is there to him. And so I think that's why this film kind of strikes close to home in many ways for us, and why we love it. And it's another, like, I can just belt out the songs, even though I can't do them very well because I'm just not a very good singer. But they are such great songs.
Right. I totally agree with you on all those counts, and I agree. It is disappointing that it does get kind of pushed by the wayside. I think they did try to also have, do more theatrical performances with it, and it just didn't seem to take off. But it, like you said, the music is something that is such quality sound, such quality songs. And yeah, the storyline, especially as you relate it to our lives, is so true, and that, again, it's learning to look beyond the differences in people.
Right.
So
it does, not everything can be taken on face value.
Right.
There's, there is the line within it, who is the monster and who is the man.
Right.
Exactly. And
Exactly.
trying to figure that out in play. It's pretty obvious who is the monster and who's the man when you get into The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Exactly.
So again, don't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
People have much more going on within them. Just because they look pretty or glamorous or whatever, that doesn't mean that they are also a good person. Doesn't mean they're not.
Right.
But it doesn't mean they are specifically because of that. So.
Good choice.
So
Nice.
those are our 5 favorite underrated Disney films. Do you have any honorable mentions to throw in there as well?
I do have a couple. One of them was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I don't know if that was necessarily, underrated when it came out. I think now it is, because it does kind of have,
it's a little hokey
at times. But if you know the history, and we've been very fortunate to be able to go out to the studios and see where it was filmed, and you're like, how did they do that in that little bit of space?
Yeah.
It's just so impressive.
Pretty impressive bit of filmmaking for sure. Yeah.
The other one, well, obviously Hunchback is one that would be on my honorable mention, but the other one on my honorable mention is one of the Winnie the Pooh films, actually, which is the Grand Adventure, Winnie the Pooh's Grand Adventure. And I think it's, again, because it wasn't as light as a lot of the Winnie the Poohs are, but to see the characters rally together, and it's just cute too, of how they, like in the mind of a child, how they see things in the dark and what it looks like to them. And then when, the lights turned on or the daylight comes and it's like, oh, wait, that's all it was. I thought that it was this big giant monster kind of thing. And it's just, I think it's really cute in that regards, but I think for some reason it was presented in a way that seemed very dark.
Very nice.
And I thought had more to it.
Yeah, I get it.
So what about you? Honorable mentions?
Yeah, I got a couple here. I'm going to start with a movie that I loved growing up, which was The Rescuers, which is a great Disney film, came out kind of in that same era when The Fox and the Hound came out. It's a story of this organization that kind of works in shadow with the UN, but it's run by mice,
right?
And they're the Rescue Aid Society, I think is what they were called, and they would kind of go out and try and help those. They get this note from this girl who's being held kind of against her will, and they send these two off to go and help save her. It's got Bob Newhart in it. He's playing Bob Newhart basically, and all his neuroses and everything else with him. He's great. Also, Ava Gabor plays Miss Bianca in it, and she's excellent. It's a cute film. It's got some action in it. It's really I find it was on my list, and I pushed it off at the last moment. But I find it's a really great film, and you can find that on Disney Plus right now. Also, just because I find it, not that the storyline is excellent or anything, but I just find it a very fun and funny film, is The Emperor's New Groove.
Yes. I totally agree with you.
It's an enjoyable movie. I mean, again, the plot, take all the plot holes, take it what the story actually is in it, but you can just go through it and watch it and laugh and have a good time and have some fun. And then this one, which I don't know if it's really underrated, and that's why it wasn't on my list, even though it's one of my favorite more recent Disney films, but I've noticed recently that it doesn't get mentioned as much. It's kind of been pushed off a little bit. It was really well received when it first came out just a few years ago, and then it's just not mentioned a lot, and that's Zootopia.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if it's really underrated, so it's not the only reason why it's not on my list. But I just feel it's not mentioned as much recently of the many great films that have come out from the Walt Disney Studios.
Right.
But I think it's a really, really well done movie, and I think that everybody should check it out. And if you haven't watched it in a couple of years, check it out again. Because there are a lot of important messages within it. Plus, it's just an enjoyable film. Plus, animals with clothes on.
I know.
Animals with pants. Always great. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. And, I think we saw something, I don't know if it was just an additional feature when the DVD came out or some other documentary, but how they had to describe, working with animals of different proportions and how to make the worlds come together, from very tiny, like mice and then very large giraffes and things. And how do you get them, through transportation and other aspects of life, made it really interesting too. But I agree with you. It has a great storyline and an important message.
Yeah. There's some terrific world building in it. I mean, when you look at it, and it did take years for them to get the story right and to get the entire thing put together to do this film. But it's very impressive. And when you go through even just the train trip through some of these different lands and seeing how, like the air conditioner, blows off the cool air into Tundra Town. It takes from Sahara Square, so that's all hot and arid and everything, and just kind of the way they made these areas work together within Zootopia itself. It's fascinating stuff.
Definitely. And I do think they're incorporating that into one of the other parks, though, right? I
think somewhere is it Hong Kong? I'm trying to remember. It's or is it I don't know. One of the Asian parks, I believe, is what is doing that soon, or going to be opening a land up soon, and I'd love to see it incorporated in some other parks.
I would think it'd be fascinating to see.
So I think that there's some real cool stuff that they're could do out of that, and they do have a Zootopia 2 coming. And there are some shorts that are going to involve some of the people in and around Zootopia that are going to be coming out to Disney Plus eventually here too. So really good stuff. So that's it for our 5 favorite underrated Disney films. We'd love to hear what yours are. Please send them to us and we'll share them on an upcoming show. Hard to believe that any movie from Disney is underrated.
Right.
But I think we've obviously struck on a few. And again, it's all subjective.
Sure.
What I say is underrated, you may not think is underrated. What I think that you feel is underrated, I might feel is, no, that's perfectly rated. Or whatever.
Or that, that one may all agree, everybody may agree is underrated, but some might not think it's as worthy to watch.
There's a lot of that also, for sure. But so many great Disney films, and some that maybe you haven't seen in a while that you should, or never seen, that you should go check out. So definitely check those out. Again, we are not going to have any Disney stories for you this week. We are recording this a week in the past. We are currently on vacation. We are currently somewhere out in the space coast of Florida right now, enjoying our Valentine's Day together. But we never leave you without giving you some sort of tip that might help you on your next vacation. And as always, we start with Michelle. One, because she's wonderful, awesome. She is the love of my life, my forever Valentine.
Likewise.
She also has the very best tip. So let's get right to it. Here is Michelle's tip of the week.
Thank you so much, sweetie. You're the best. So my tip relates to a topic we've talked about in the past, and that's in regards to preparing for a vacation, and whether you're preparing for yourself as adults, or probably more so if you have kids and you're planning a family trip to one of the Disney parks. And that's always a fun thing, right? It's the anticipation for it, the preparing for it, the planning that gets excited. That makes your vacation actually endure longer, because it's all that energies and positivity before you even step out the door. But one of the ways that you can do now, which has been really a benefit that it's on Disney Parks blog site due to the pandemic, is where they have films of some of the attractions.
Oh, yeah.
So whether you're reliving some of your favorite attractions, or maybe introducing to kids some attractions that you're wondering if they would like or be afraid of, or something like that, and getting them introduced to it so it can have an enjoyable impact once they're there, is to take advantage of having that access to that information. And again, it's a fun way, even if it's something you're reliving, to get ready for a trip and say, oh, that's right, I'm going to get to go see that.
It is. It's a great way to get Disney in your life on a daily basis, even if you can't get to the park.
True. And if you're getting ready to get to it, it just, get you there a little bit, gets a little bit more excitement
Right.
to it.
And by the way, I can tell you just from some of our friends that doing some of these ride-throughs with their children has worked to help them be prepared for it. Our friends Keenan and Rachel from Part of Our World podcast, I know when they were getting ready for a trip, it was a little over a year ago, I guess, when they were going with their son, their young son, they would show videos of them getting ready to take them on the Tower of Terror.
Right.
They would show the Tower of Terror, and Keenan would actually put him like in a box or a chair or something and raise him up and then drop him, you know.
Cool.
So he was like totally ready for
Right.
it, and, and knew what to expect when he went on Tower of Terror, even though he
Nice.
was a very young child. So it can work,
Right.
and it is some fascinating stuff for sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
great
So-
tip, Michelle's
well,
tip.
thank you.
Always the best tip.
Oh, you're sweet.
My tip this week is that, even though, we know vaccines are starting to get out there to more and more people, hopefully they'll ramp up more in the near future. Look, this disease, this virus is still a real thing out there. And even though you have a trip out to Walt Disney World schedule and more people are getting vaccinated and people, hopefully it's getting better or whatever, there's still some precautions you'll want to make when you go out there. And of course you'll want to wear your mask. Everybody should be wearing their mask over their nose all the time as much as possible. That is one of the biggest keys. Being sure to physical distance yourself from somebody at least 6 feet away as much as possible. That is another key. But one of the biggest things, and that Michelle has told me that she's learned, is that a lot of times what this thing is spread through is, yes, some people getting together with people and not wearing masks or whatever, but also from dining. And obviously when you go to the Walt Disney World Resort, you're probably going to want to go out and grab a meal from time to time, and that, just be aware that is somewhat of a danger, but you can do it safely. Mostly start by staying within your family, within your household. I mean, you're going to be eating meals with them anyway.
Right.
If you're going to take your mask down and sit down for 20, 30 minutes or whatever for a meal, try and keep it to that. Another way to help do that is by going to a restaurant that has outdoors. At least if you're outdoors, it does keep it aerated a little bit more.
Right.
It does keep it, you still have to do precautions, be careful, but it does sort of mitigate it a little bit. And so I just wanted to mention a few great restaurants that do have outdoor dining at the Walt Disney World Resort. So maybe if you want to be a little safer, maybe you start booking some of the reservations at some of these restaurants. So here are just a few, and there are many, but here are just a few of the better ones. Tony's Town Square Restaurant at Magic Kingdom Park has outdoor dining available for you. The Rose and Crown Dining Room at Epcot has outdoor dining, and that one's nice because it's just right there on the lake, which is some really great views from there. The Nomad Lounge, which is a wonderful choice for some small plates and some great cocktails or whatever out at Disney's Animal Kingdom Park. Definitely hit that up. The Hollywood Brown Derby Lounge at Disney's Hollywood Studios, outdoor dining available for you there. If you're going to Disney Springs, the Boathouse, outdoor dining right out there on the water again, and Chef Art Smith's Homecoming, which has a great brunch from what I understand. We haven't experienced it, but people rave about their brunch there. Not that they have outdoor dining. Now, these places all have indoor and outdoor dining, so you'll want to request it when you go in. Make your reservation if you need to make a reservation at these spots, and then just request. I like to sit outdoors. Sometimes that will be easier for you to go out there and see the scenes. Other times you might have to wait a little longer, but it's just a better way to kind of keep yourself safe if you're going to be dining in these situations.
Right. Good point. Yes. And understand too, you may want to actually get to your reservation a little earlier if you are going to make that specific request, and understand that, like you said, it may require more extensive of a wait as a result of that, but, certainly something you can explore. And it is true. And you still want to consider that 6 foot distance because,
as much as possible.
Yeah. From knowing in personal experiences with friends, that is certainly an area that you may be outdoors eating together, but if you're not that 6 feet apart, you could also still be very, very vulnerable to getting it.
Yeah. So be prepared for that. Like I said, the best thing to do is eat with the people you always eat with, because it's there, it's not there, whatever. It's going to be the situation anyways. But if you feel the need to go and dine with some other people, yes. Heck, what we would suggest is trying to keep your mask on as much as possible while you're eating. But we know no one's going to do that. So the best way to mitigate it as much as possible is to be outdoors. Try and space yourselves out as much as possible. And if you're going to laugh really loudly, laugh in another direction.
True.
Anyway.
We know it's a tough time for
It's
people.
tough.
And sometimes the sacrifices may seem a little hard to deal with, but, it could really make a big difference
Right.
in your life.
And the more we follow the rules, whatever, the sooner we can get through this thing and get back to what would be the normal life, quote unquote normal life, the new normal that we have known from the past.
Right.
So, and again, Michelle's gotten her second dose of the vaccine.
Yep.
She's, on her way. We're all going to get there eventually. It's just going to take some time and just stay with the program. Everybody stay with the program. So speaking of the staying with the program, we appreciate that you joined us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts, or the very best place to find us is on our own website, HyperionAdventurespodcast.com. And while you're there,
You would be so wonderful to sign up for the newsletter.
you're wonderful anyways, but
Right.
you're especially wonderful if you sign up
Exactly.
for the newsletter. Just another way to be involved more within the Hyperion Adventures podcast world, get more information, find out, be the first to kind of chime in on some of our topics,
Right.
but just be there to be part of our Hyperion Adventures podcast world. Another way is to follow along with us on Twitter or on social media. We're on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We are on YouTube. These videos are taking a slow pause, but they will be back. Episodes, video versions of these episodes will be debuting back on our Hyperion Adventures Podcast YouTube channel. And if you want to find us there, just do that search for Hyperion Adventures Podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll know whenever those new videos come out. And if you ever want to just chime in with us for any reason, please hit us up at our Gmail account, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
We sure love hearing from you, and we really enjoy the interaction with you. And as we've talked about in the past, whether it be through emailing with us or signing up for the newsletter, we don't share your email address with anybody.
Nope, it's always just for us to use, just to be more in touch with you as much as you want to be in touch with us. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. We look forward to sharing some time with you again next week, which, by the way, I didn't mention. Next week, we're doing our 5 favorite Marvel moments.
Yes.
So that's exciting with WandaVision we're loving that. So
Yes.
anyway, until that time, I'm Tom,
I'm Michelle.
and we hope that you have a magical week.